Imagine standing in New York City, surrounded by 20,000 other people, all dressed up in smart lycra, most of them matching. Most of them filled with a yummy breakfast for the morning, and most importantly, filled with nerves and trepidation for they're about to embark on the New York City Marathon. 26 miles around the streets of New York. Most of them have been thinking for planning and training for a long time. Most of them have been thinking about the celebrations they're going to have that night, what they're going to eat, the post-race beers and other things that they're going to do to say, wow, we did our first marathon or our second or our third. I stood on the starting line on the 4th of November last year, and unlike most of the other people in that race, I was not thinking about any of those things. What I was thinking about was the fact that that night I would go home and sleep. The next day I would wake up and I would run another marathon. And the day after that, I would run again, and again, and again, and again. And I would run for 100 days, 100 marathons. This is a kind of a crazy place for me to start, because I'm actually not a marathon runner. I'm not naturally gifted at sport. I came to sport very late in life, when I had an accident and the doctors told me, Mina, you're never going to be able to run again. I didn't actually have the heart to tell them I'd never run before, and that if you'd made me choose between running for the bus and catching the next one, I would have been like, next one, thanks. But something happened inside me that day, and I thought, I'm not going to let other people determine what I can and can't do. I'm not going to let what is normal make me determine that this is the normal thing that I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And so I started swimming and then biking and then running, and eventually, fast forward to today, and I've run 3 expeditions. I've run 3 expeditions not because I like running. Someone from CNN asked me on screen, it was quite embarrassing actually, but asked me, Mina, how much do you like running? On a scale of 1 to 10, and I'm like, where 1 is the least? 1. But I have run 3 expeditions. The first one I did was to run across 7 deserts on 7 continents in 7 weeks. The second I did was to run 40 marathons in 40 days down 6 of the world's great rivers, the Nile, the Amazon. What I saw there, the people that I met, the experiences that I had with water were unlike anything I'd had before and unlike anything I'd ever seen. It is one thing to read about numbers on a page or see images on a screen. It's another thing entirely to experience it for yourself. So I came back and I spoke to the media and I told them our stories, and we got huge reception. Billions of people saw this. We were on all the mainstream televisions, we were covered everywhere, and all of a sudden we started to see pickup that water started to become more of front page news than it had been. But it still wasn't enough. Fortune magazine named me one of the 50 greatest leaders in the world. I'm like, great. But a platform means nothing if you can't achieve action, if you can't achieve change. And so I decided that I was going to do something to show what it meant to be 100% committed to change. In my case, to changing how we think about water. And so on the 4th of November, I pinned my number on my t-shirt and off I started on my crazy journey. We decided that I was going to run across 20 different countries, and I chose each country for its link to the water crisis, not only for the problems that people were facing, but also for the people, the innovators who are working to solve it. One of the first places we went to was the Aral Sea in Uzbekistan. I wanted to go there because actually my background is in climate change, so I'd seen these pictures of the dwindling Aral Sea, and I couldn't believe that in our lifetime, in 30 years, it had diminished from being the 4th biggest inland ocean in the world to an ocean less than 10% of its size. 30 years, that's our lifetime. And I got there and I ran through the seabed, right here. I ran past carcasses of old ships that had been carrying fish only years before from one side of the ocean to the other. Ships that had been used to take and transport goods and products from the town Moynak, which now lies only 120 miles from the ocean, the old port. And in the old port, I met a whole bunch of people, including this fisherman. And I talked to him, like, what on earth has happened here? And he said, oh, Mina, scientists warned us that this would happen. For 30 years, they told us that the sea would dry up. And in spite of that, people have been mining the Ceres River for water, water to grow cotton, water to grow rice, and it's been great for some people and bad for all the rest of us. Women came up and grabbed my hand and said, Mina, please help us. We have no jobs, we have no economy. Our community here in the port, now 120 miles from the ocean, is dead, and we no longer have the ability to send our kids to school. It broke my heart, and it made me realize this is not just an environmental catastrophe, it's also a people one. In India, I went to India straight from Uzbekistan, and again I heard about cotton, and I heard about the role that corporates play in what's happening on the ground. And I think one of the things that surprised me is not the stories about how wells are drying up, how women now have to wait for tankers to bring their water, where before, when they were growing up, they could just go down to the local river to take it out of the water, out of the river. I expected to hear about all of those things. What I was surprised about was the number of farmers like this man who travelled for hours to come and meet me. He'd heard that I was in town and he said, I want you to tell my story. What I want you to do is to help people understand that we care about our environment, we care about our water tables and our diminishing levels of water. But what I want you to do is I want you to explain to those companies who make numbers in a boardroom about percentages of cotton that's going to be BCI cotton or organic cotton. I want them to understand it's really hard for us on the ground without access to capital and knowledge and infrastructure to make a change. We want to change. We see these markets, we see the opportunity, we see the price of sustainable cotton going up, but the price of the cotton that we can produce is going down, and we're suffering because we're trapped in this never-ending cycle where we have not enough money to pay for the infrastructure we need, and yet we need it because otherwise we can't sell our cotton for enough to feed our family or send our kids to school. Economic issues and the consequences of action are felt in other places too. Places like Walgett in Australia, where farmers have been suffering for years from drought. When you drive through the streets of Walgett, for sale signs litter the sidewalks. Farmers can't move their property because without water, the land is valueless. People with thriving businesses can't sell the business because investors look at it and say, without water, there's going to be no people living here. What business do you have? The situation is completely dire, and it's dire not only for the people in those economies and those communities, but also for the next generation. This is Christian, a farmer that lives just on the outskirts of Cape Town. Christian sat me down on the back of his ute underneath this corrugated iron shed. It was blisteringly hot, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and I was actually quite happy with the relief, but I was shocked at the pictures that Christian showed me. Christian showed me pictures of his farm covered in green crops with 9-10 metres, so it must be like several times higher than this building, of dam water. This is Christian's dam now. A dam I then ran across. Christian said to me, "What hope do I have, Mina? This is my life. Farming is everything. This farm is everything I have. My two options are, 1, pray for rain. 2, leave my farm." It's pretty dire. And it's pretty dire, pretty big, pretty overwhelming. It's easy to sit in a room like this and think, that's a big problem. We're all faced with so many issues, climate change, water. Isn't it someone else's issue? Can't we just let somebody else take care of this? It's not my problem. It's too big. It's too confronting. Here's the reality. Water is everyone's problem. Everything we use, we buy and we consume every single day takes water to make. From the shirts that you're wearing, the pants, the smart outfits, the coffee you drank this morning, the disposable coffee cups I see in some places, all of those things took water to make. Just as an example, the water that went into what you're wearing today, one outfit, took more water to make than all the water you drank in your entire lifetime, just one outfit. Right? Putting that in perspective, when we know that the global community is increasing, when we know that our demand for more stuff is increasing, more food, more clothes, more everything, the demand for water will also increase. In fact, experts predict that by 2030, there's going to be a 40% greater demand for water than the supply of water available. In fact, the reason why I run marathons is that in kilometres, a marathon is 42 kilometres. And every single day I want to run and remind myself just how big this number is. This is not a future I want to see for us, for people like Christian, or for any of the next generation or the generations to come. The consequences are not far away, they're being felt now. I met Mike Seeley, who has grown citrus all his life. Mike has been told by his local community, whose water resources have dried up, that he has to bulldoze 70% of his citrus crops. Trees that he used to run around when he was a kid are now being forced to the trash pile. And in Beaufort West, it's not a farming issue, it's a people and a city issue. They have no water here. This is a city 4 hours drive north of Cape Town. The taps have been turned off, not turned off from choice, turned off because there is no water available. On this day when we were running, I elected to go out on the back of the truck and we delivered 3-gallon containers of water to people. Kids like this who had stayed home from school. Teenagers who ran after our truck begging for more water. When we turned right instead of left, fights broke out on the street. I was completely devastated. It was very, very confronting. And I thought, this is the reality. And it's a reality not just for people in places like Beaufort West and Walgett, it's a reality for all of us. This list was published by the BBC. It's their list of the cities that are going to run out of water. These are not small places like the Walgetts of the world. These are big cities where millions and millions and millions of people live. We have a water crisis and we can't afford to kick the problem down the road anymore. The time to act is right now. And the time and the opportunity lies with every single one of you. It's easy to think I'm just one person. What can I do? The reality is we can all do a lot. I met Mike, who's a brewer. Mike knows his numbers. So Mike spent a lot of time in the brewing industry trying to understand exactly where water goes. And step by step, he's reduced his water consumption by 60%. Knowing numbers helps to understand what we can do to the bottom line. And then the cactus man, yes, that's his real name, who has figured out how to plant indigenous trees and has scaled up not just one, but millions of trees around the Rio Grande Valley, helping to rehabilitate the water system. And this Jordanian farmer who has spent time working out where all the springs are in the desert, piping them through small drip irrigation systems, and now grows lemons that sustain his 23 children. Yes, he's been a busy man. His 23 children now can go to school, can have food, because he has an amazingly thriving lemon farm on his property. But it wasn't until I got to day 62 of my run around the world that I really realised how much of an impact one person can truly have. Let me show you.
After persevering through days of pain, it came to a point where doctors told me that even if I continued walking, I would cause long-term damage to my leg and may never be able to run for water again. I was absolutely devastated that this happened with only 38 marathons left. Gutted doesn't even begin to describe how I felt. But in that dark moment, something amazing started to happen. People rallied around me. First my mentor and my teammates who stepped up and collectively finished Marathon 63 for me and with me. And then progressively people around the world. People I know and many I don't. People who are logging miles for me all around the world. People who understand that this is a campaign about all of us and what each of us can do to help solve our global water crisis. This campaign is bigger than any single one of us. Together, we can get these marathons done, and we can show what it means to be 100% committed to this issue. I'm absolutely humbled by people's generosity and willingness to help solve this water crisis. Just as I can't do this on my own, The water crisis needs a community of people around the world to come together to solve it.
Change isn't made by one person. Change is made by people united with purpose and passion and perseverance. In our case, I sat in a wheelchair and then hobbled around on my crutches, and I watched as a community of people stepped up to solve our water crisis. People I had never met before, in 160 cities, in over 50 countries and territories on every single continent of this amazing planet that we live on. It was humbling, it was inspiring, it was incredible. Together we had run more than the distance from the North to the South Pole. We'd run way further than the 100 marathons I had set out to achieve. And what I watched happen is, instead of this being my ambition to change how we thought about water, it became a global movement, a global community for change. But the thing it really showed me is that you don't have to be anyone to be someone. Every single one of us is capable of greatness. Every single one of us in this room and beyond is capable of stepping up and saying, I'm just an ordinary person, but you know what? I can make an impact on this planet. As one of our community posted during the campaign, they said, individually we can make an impact, but together we can change the world. Just imagine if every single one of us in this room today walked out and said, I'm going to do one thing, just one thing. In my community, in my company, the ideas we'll hear in a minute, or in my individual lives, to save water. Whether it's refusing single-use plastics, saying no to the coffee cups, instituting new systems or procedures in your company, or actually just knowing the action that you're making instead of just the words that are on the page. Imagine every single one of us together making a difference. Just one thing. Every single one of us. Together, we really could change the world. Thank you very much.